Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Burggraaf with the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association. 20 years ago, 21 of 26 larger housing markets across Ontario were considered affordable. Today, that number is zero. And according to a new report by the Missing Middle Initiative, an average family is now priced out of almost every large housing market across the province. Ottawa is no exception to that, where housing affordability has been labeled as completely unattainable. To unpack those findings and the state of Ottawa's housing market, I'm joined by Mike Moffatt. Mike is the founding director of the Missing Middle Initiative and the executive in residence at the Smart Prosperity Institute, which is housed at the University of Ottawa. Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So before we jump into the report, what's the Missing Middle Initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at the challenges facing the young middle-class Canadians and young middle-class Canadian families. So it's a play on words because a lot of what we do is housing-related, and we all know about the missing middle housing shortage. But we think in general, the middle is missing in Canada. And we've seen a decline of the middle class, again, particularly of young families. And we're devoted to looking at policy solutions to help revive that middle class.
So the report we're talking about today really examines and compares kind of the price to income ratio for single family homes kind of in three spots: January 05, December 2014, December 2024. What did you see happening in Ottawa over those kind of 20 years?
Yeah, overall, prices have gone up in Ottawa faster than wages. Now, not quite as dramatically as, say, in the GTA or southwestern Ontario, but going back 20 years, price to income ratios were under 4. So back in 2005, I think median family income was about $65,000 or so, and sort of average single family home price would have been 4 times that. Today, average family income has gone up. It's $115,000 across Ontario, but because home prices have gone up even faster than that, now you're looking at price to income ratios at the sort of 6.5. And we label that as completely unattainable. And by that we mean you're not going to qualify for a mortgage at that level unless you have a cosigner or a lot of wealth coming into it. So for families earning just over 115,000, yes, they might be able to do it, but it's going to be tough. But that's essentially what we look at, that difference between what median family earns and what home prices are, and whether or not they'd be able to both qualify for a mortgage and then pay for the monthly payments as well.
So the second half of that 20 years, kind of that second decade from 2014 to 2024, that's when the price to income ratio really jumps up. Again, we're looking at Ottawa specifically, but how does that kind of compare to the rest of the province?
Yeah, we did see an escalation. So in Ottawa, we did see some slight increases between 2005 and 2014. We saw it in the GTA as well, but in most of Ontario, you didn't have much of a price increase. And in fact, price income ratios actually fell for some markets during that period. But since 2015, we've seen prices disassociate themselves from wages. Obviously, this happened during the pandemic, but it actually predates the pandemic by a few years. And the large cause of it is population growth being disconnected from housing. So we didn't get a lot of, housing starts didn't go up all that much, but we had a big population boom, which was a combination of increased immigration, international students, and we see that here in Ottawa. Many homes are being converted into investment properties to house students. Plus, after oil prices crashed in 2015, you had a lot of Ontarians that had moved out to Alberta, out to the oil patch. When they returned in 2016, 2017 or so, that added additional fuel to the market. So, we have seen, it's really been since about 2015 to 2016 where we've seen price income ratios get out of whack. And then, clearly things got very out of whack during the pandemic, and we're living with that today.
Before we kind of get into some of the finer numbers on the report, there's a WHAM score. So the concept of a WHAM score that you guys have kind of introduced in this. Can you kind of walk us through what it is? It's the Weekly Housing Affordability Metric. What kind of goes into it? Why did you kind of come up with this metric to do this work?
Yeah, so a traditional measure of affordability is a price income ratio. But the challenge with the price income ratio is it doesn't really take into account changes in interest rates. And we know if interest rates are low, those monthly payments are easier on the wallet just because you're paying less in mortgage interest. And, if interest rates go up to 18 or 20%, like in the 1980s, those payments can really bite. So it's a way of doing an apples to apples comparison across generations. So what the WAM score looks at is the amount of weekly income it would take to save up for an individual to save up for a 20% down payment, plus the number of weeks of pre-tax income it takes to finance the first 5 years of a mortgage. And we assume that the family's taking out a 5-year fixed mortgage. So traditionally in Canada, this tends to be around the 150 range, which we define as being affordable. It roughly translates to a price income ratio of about 3.8 or 4 or so, obviously depending on what interest rates are. Once you go above 150, we have a range that's called 150 to 200, which is unaffordable, which means that you're still going to qualify for a mortgage, but your mortgage payments and your property taxes and so on are starting to take up a big chunk of your paycheck. Once you get above 200, between 200 and 250, we call it deeply unaffordable. So at deeply unaffordable, you're kind of borderline whether or not you'll qualify for a mortgage. But if you do, it's going to be painful, again, unless you have a lot of parental help or something like that. And then once you get above 250, we call it unattainable or completely unattainable, because you're not qualifying for a mortgage at that point. So it's just a way of being able to take into account wages, prices, and 5-year mortgage rates to develop an overall score of affordability.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. And always new concepts, right, are always interesting to dive into and kind of give a different perspective and measurement for both lay people and people kind of in the industry like we are. So up next, Mike and I are going to be diving into what this all means for saving for a down payment and for monthly payments here in the Ottawa housing market.